The unexpected visitor. In the bustling corridors of the Galactic Union's headquarters on Earth, Lieutenant Commander Jace Sullivan hurried towards the briefing room. As a seasoned officer in the Union's diplomatic corps, Jace had seen his fair share of interstellar crises, but the urgency of this summons suggested something extraordinary. Entering the room, Jace was greeted by the sight of his superior, Admiral Nora Donovan, her face etched with concern. Beside her stood an unfamiliar figure, a tall, slender alien with shimmering silver skin and piercing emerald eyes. "Commander Sullivan," Admiral Donovan began, "meet Ambassador Zilloth of the Corax Empire. She has come to us with an urgent request." Jace nodded respectfully to the alien ambassador, his curiosity piqued. The Corax were a notoriously isolationist species, rarely engaging with the Galactic Union. Ambassador Zilloth stepped forward, her movements graceful and precise. "Commander Sullivan, I require your assistance in a matter of utmost importance. My daughter, Princess Azalia, has been stranded on a hostile planet in the Altaxian system. I need you to bring her back safely." Jace furrowed his brow. "Forgive me, Ambassador, but why come to the Galactic Union? Surely the Corax have their own rescue operations." Zilloth's expression darkened. "The planet where my daughter is stranded is under the control of a rival faction, the Zorgans. They have made it clear that any Corax rescue attempt will be seen as an act of war, but they may be more amenable to a human intervention." Admiral Donovan interjected. "The Galactic Union has been trying to establish diplomatic ties with the Zorgans for years. This could be our chance to make progress, while also fostering goodwill with the Corax." Jace nodded, the pieces falling into place. "I understand. I'll assemble a team immediately." As he turned to leave, Ambassador Zilloth called out, "Commander Sullivan, one more thing. My daughter, she is headstrong and independent. She may not take kindly to being rescued. You will need to use all your diplomatic skills to convince her to return with you." Jace smiled ruefully. "I'll keep that in mind, Ambassador." With a final nod, Jace exited the briefing room, his mind already racing with plans and contingencies. A rescue mission deep in hostile territory, with a reluctant princess as the target. It was going to be one hell of a mission. As he strode through the corridors, Jace tapped his comm badge. "Sullivan to bridge. Prep the Valiant for immediate departure. We have a princess to save. Into the unknown." The U.S. Valiant, a sleek and agile diplomatic vessel, slipped through the shimmering veil of the wormhole, emerging into the unfamiliar starscape of the Altaxian system. On the bridge, Commander Jace Sullivan leaned forward in his chair, his eyes scanning the viewscreen. "Report," he barked, the tension evident in his voice. His first officer, Lieutenant Kira Patel, consulted her readouts. "We've arrived at the coordinates provided by the Corax, sir. The planet Zorgon Prime is directly ahead." Jace nodded, his jaw set. "Any sign of Princess Azalia's ship?" Kira shook her head. "Negative, sir. But I am detecting a faint distress signal from the planet's surface. It could be her." Jace rose from his chair, tugging at his uniform. "Then that's where we're going. Kira, you have the bridge. Assemble an away team and meet me in the transporter room." Minutes later, Jace materialized on the surface of Zorgon Prime, flanked by Kira and a team of security officers. The landscape was harsh and unforgiving, with jagged rock formations and swirling clouds of toxic gas. Kira consulted her tricorder. "The distress signal is coming from a cave system 2 kilometers to the north." Jace nodded, unholstering his phaser. "Stay sharp, everyone. We don't know what we're walking into." The away team trekked through the inhospitable terrain, their environmental suits shielding them from the noxious atmosphere. As they approached the cave entrance, Jace held up a hand, signaling for caution. "I'm detecting life signs inside," Kira whispered, her eyes glued to her tricorder. "One Corax, and something else. Something big." Jace's grip tightened on his phaser. "Let's move. Princess Azalia may not have much time." The team crept into the cave, the darkness enveloping them. The only light came from the glow of their suit lights, casting eerie shadows on the rocky walls. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a sight that stopped them in their tracks. In the center of the cavern, surrounded by the shattered remains of her ship, stood Princess Azalea. Her silver skin was smudged with dirt and blood, her emerald eyes blazing with defiance. And towering over her, its maw dripping with saliva, was a creature out of nightmares, a Zorgon behemoth. Jace's heart raced as he took in the scene. The princess was alive, but she was in mortal danger. They had to act fast. "Princess Azalea," he called out, his voice echoing in the cavern. "We're here to help. We need to get you out of here." The princess turned, her expression a mix of relief and annoyance. "It's about time someone showed up. I was starting to think I'd have to take care of this overgrown lizard myself." Jace couldn't help but smile at her bravado, even as the behemoth rolled in fury. "I'm Commander Jace Sullivan of the Galactic Union. Your mother sent us. Now, let's get you home." As the away team fanned out, phasers at the ready, Jace knew that this was only the beginning. With a hostile empire, a defiant princess, and a monstrous creature between them and safety, the real challenge was just beginning. The daring escape, with the Zorgon behemoth bearing down on them, Commander Jace Sullivan knew they had only moments to act. The creature's scales gleamed in the dim light of the cave, its eyes glinting with primal hunger. "Kira, Sander, flank left," Jace shouted, his phaser already firing. "Lena, Roth with me. We need to draw its attention away from the princess." The team sprang into action, their movements precise and coordinated. Phaser beams lanced out, striking the behemoth's thick hide. The creature roared in anger, its tail lashing out and shattering rock formations. Amid the chaos, Princess Azalea stood her ground, her own phaser in hand. She fired with a cool precision that belied her royal upbringing. "I appreciate the rescue," she called out to Jace, "but I had the situation under control." Jace couldn't suppress a grin as he dodged a swipe from the behemoth's claws. "Of course you did, Princess, but even the best of us could use a little help sometimes." Together, the team and the princess fought, their phasers carving deep wounds into the behemoth's flesh. But the creature was relentless, driven by a primal rage that seemed to shrug off even the most powerful blasts. "We can't keep this up forever," Kira yelled, ducking as a boulder whistled past her head. "We need a plan." Jace's mind raced, analyzing the situation. Then his eyes fell on the shattered remains of the princess's ship, and an idea formed. "The ship's power core," he shouted. "If we can overload it, the explosion might take out the behemoth." Princess Azalea's eyes widened. "Are you insane? The blast will kill us all." But Jace was already moving, sprinting towards the wreckage. "Not if we time it right. Kira, Sander, keep that thing busy. Princess with me." Reluctantly, Azalea followed, covering Jace's back as he worked to hotwire the power core. The behemoth roared, thrashing as it tried to reach its prey. "Almost there," Jace grunted, his hands flying over the unfamiliar Corax technology. "Just a few more seconds." With a final twist of a wire, the power core began to hum, a dangerous vibration that shook the very ground. "Everyone to me," Jace yelled. "Kira, signal the Valiant for emergency beam out." The team gathered around Jace and the princess, phasers still firing as the behemoth closed in. The power core's hum grew to a deafening pitch, the light from its core casting stark shadows on the cave walls. Just as the behemoth lunged, its jaws wide, the familiar tingle of the transporter beam enveloped the team. In a shimmer of light, they vanished, materializing safely on the pad of the Valiant's transporter room. Moments later, the view screen on the bridge lit up with the brilliant flash of the exploding power core. The shockwave ripped through the cave, engulfing the behemoth in a fiery inferno. On the bridge, the crew erupted in cheers. They had done it. The princess was safe, and the behemoth was no more. But as Jace looked at Princess Azalea, he saw not relief in her eyes, but a steely determination. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "The Zorgans will not take this lightly. We may have won the battle, but the war is just beginning." Jace nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. The Galactic Union had made a powerful enemy today, but they had also gained a valuable ally in the Corax Princess. As the Valiant set course for home, Jace couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger adventure. With a sigh, he settled into his chair, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The gathering storm. News of the daring rescue of Princess Azalea spread like wildfire through the Galactic Union. In the halls of power on Earth, diplomats and politicians alike buzzed with excitement. The successful mission was being hailed as a turning point in relations with the reclusive Corax Empire. But Commander Jace Sullivan knew better. As he stood in the briefing room once again, facing the holographic projection of Ambassador Zaloth, he could see the worry lines etched on her silver face. "The Zorgans have declared the rescue an act of war," Zaloth said, her voice grave. "They are massing their fleets on the border of Corax space. We fear an invasion is imminent." Jace frowned. "What does the Galactic Union plan to do?" Admiral Donovan, also present via hologram, spoke up. "The Union is in a difficult position. We have no formal treaty with the Corax, and a war with the Zorgans could be catastrophic. Many in the government are pushing for a diplomatic solution." Princess Azalea, who had insisted on being present for the briefing, scoffed. "Diplomacy? With the Zorgans? They understand only one language: force. If we do not stand with the Corax now, the Zorgans will run rampant over the galaxy." Jace could see the truth in her words, even as he understood the Union's hesitation. A war on this scale could destabilize the entire quadrant. Ambassador Zoloth turned to Jace. "Commander Sullivan, you and your crew have already proven yourselves as capable allies. I ask now that you aid us once more. Help us defend against the Zorgon threat. Show the galaxy that humans are not just explorers, but defenders of peace." Jace didn't hesitate. "The Valiant and her crew are at your service, Ambassador. We will stand with the Corax against any threat." Princess Azalea nodded, a rare smile bracing her lips. "I knew you were a warrior at heart, Commander. Together, we will teach the Zorgans the folly of their aggression." As the meeting adjourned and the holograms faded, Jace was left alone with his thoughts. He had just committed his ship and his crew to a war that could shape the future of the galaxy. It was a heavy burden, but one he was ready to bear. On the bridge of the Valiant, Jace addressed his crew. "We have a new mission," he said, his voice firm. "We are to join the Corax fleet in defending against a Zorgan invasion. I won't lie to you, this will be dangerous. We will be outnumbered and outgunned. But we have something the Zorgans do not: the strength of our convictions and the power of our alliances. Together, we will face this threat, and together, we will prevail." As the crew set to work, preparing the ship for the battles to come, Jace looked out at the stars streaking past the viewscreen. Somewhere out there, the Zorgan fleet was approaching, a storm of destruction and conquest. But they would not face that storm alone. With the Corax at their side and the courage of his crew in his heart, Jace knew they would weather whatever trials lay ahead. The gathering storm was coming, and the Valiant would be ready to meet it head-on. The Battle of Corax Prime. The Valiant dropped out of warp at the edge of the Corax system, the sleek ship immediately greeted by the sight of the assembled Corax fleet. Dozens of silver ships hung in space, their angular designs a stark contrast to the Valiant's smooth lines. On the bridge, Commander Jace Sullivan stood tall, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. Beside him, Princess Azalea stood, her presence a reminder of the high stakes of this mission. "Hail the flagship," Jace ordered, his voice steady. The viewscreen shimmered, revealing the stern visage of Admiral Zilara, the commander of the Corax fleet. "Commander Sullivan," she greeted, her tone formal. "The Zorgan fleet is expected to arrive within the hour. We are grateful for your assistance in this matter." Jace inclined his head. "The Valiant and her crew stand ready, Admiral. We will not let the Zorgans threaten your world." As the communication ended, Jace turned to his crew. "Red alert," he commanded. "All hands to battle stations. We don't know exactly what we're facing, but we know it won't be easy. Stay sharp, trust in each other, and we'll get through this." The bridge crew nodded, their faces set with determination as the red alert klaxons began to sound. An hour later, the Zorgon fleet emerged from warp, their ships a mass of jagged edges and pulsing green lights. They outnumbered the combined Corax and Galactic Union forces 3-1. "Incoming hail," Lieutenant Kira reported, her voice tense. The view screen shifted to show the sneering face of a Zorgon commander, his scales a mottled green, and his eyes a burning yellow. "Surrender now," he rasped, "and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and you will suffer beyond imagining." Jace's response was to cut the communication. "All ships engage at will. Protect the Corax homeworld at all costs." And with that, the Battle of Corax Prime began. The Valiant darted through the chaos of the battlefield, her phasers lancing out at the Zorgon ships. Around her, the Corax fleet engaged in a deadly dance, their silver hulls reflecting the green fire of Zorgon weapons. On the bridge, Jace gripped the arms of his chair as the ship shuddered under a particularly heavy barrage. "Shields holding at 60%, Kira reported, her fingers flying over her console. "Keep firing," Jace ordered. "We need to draw their fire away from the planet." For hours, the battle raged, the space around Corax Prime lit by the flash of explosions and the trails of torpedoes. Ships on both sides were lost, the wreckage drifting in the void. But slowly, inevitably, the tide began to turn. The Valiant, with her advanced technology and the skill of her crew, was taking a heavy toll on the Zorgon fleet. And the Corax, fighting with the desperate strength of those defending their home, were rallying. In the end, it was Princess Azalea who struck the decisive blow. Taking control of a Corax fighter, she led a daring attack on the Zorgon flagship, her ship weaving through the enemy's defenses with impossible grace. With a final defiant burst of phaser fire, Azalea crippled the Zorgon ship, sending it spiraling into the depths of space. Seeing their flagship destroyed, the remaining Zorgon forces broke rank and fled, vanishing into warp. On the bridge of the Valiant, the crew erupted into cheers. They had done it. Against all odds, they had emerged victorious. But even as they celebrated, Jace knew that this was only the beginning. The Zorgons had been defeated, but they would not forget this humiliation. They would return, stronger and more determined than ever. And when they did, the Galactic Union would need to be ready. They would need allies like the Corax, and leaders like Princess Azalea. As the Valiant set course for home, the wariness of battle giving way to the elation of victory, Jace couldn't help but smile. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that he and his crew would face them head-on. For they were the defenders of the galaxy, the champions of peace and justice. They were the best of what humanity had to offer. And they would never back down. Diplomatic machinations. The victory at Corax Prime had changed the galactic landscape. The Zorgons, once thought to be an unstoppable force, had been beaten back by the combined might of the Corax and the Galactic Union. News of the battle spread like wildfire, inspiring those who had lived under the threat of Zorgon aggression. But for Commander Jace Sullivan and the crew of the Valiant, there was little time to rest on their laurels. As they docked at Earth's space dock for repairs and resupply, they were immediately summoned to a high-level meeting. In a secure conference room deep within the United Earth Government complex, Jace found himself facing not just Admiral Donovan and Ambassador Zoloth, but a host of other dignitaries from across the Galactic Union. Commander Sullivan began a tall, slender being with shimmering golden skin, the representative of the Aurelian Confederation. "Your actions at Corax Prime have resonated across the galaxy. Many of our member states are now calling for a more proactive stance against the Zorgons." Jace inclined his head. "We did what was necessary to defend an ally and preserve peace. The Valiant and her crew stand ready to continue that mission." Ambassador Zoloth spoke up, her silver eyes glinting. The Corex Empire is deeply grateful for your assistance, Commander, but we must look to the future. The Zorgons are wounded, but they are not defeated. We must press our advantage, rally more systems to our cause. Only together can we hope to end their threat once and for all. Around the table, heads nodded in agreement, but Admiral Donovan raised a cautionary hand. We must tread carefully, she warned. Aggressive action could be seen as provocation. We don't want to push neutral systems into the Zorgons' arms. The debate continued for hours, the assembled leaders arguing over strategy and diplomacy. Jace listened intently, offering his perspective when asked, but largely content to let the political leaders chart the course. Finally, a consensus began to emerge. The Galactic Union would reach out to neutral systems, offering protection and support in exchange for their alliance against the Zorgons. Simultaneously, they would launch targeted strikes against key Zorgon military installations, aiming to cripple their ability to wage war. As the meeting adjourned, Jace couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The plan was sound, but he knew from experience that no plan survived contact with the enemy. The Zorgons would adapt, would strike back in ways they couldn't predict. And then there was the question of Princess Azalea. The young Corax Royal had proven herself a capable warrior and leader, but she was also impulsive and headstrong. Jace worried that her desire for revenge against the Zorgons could lead them into unnecessary danger. As if summoned by his thoughts, Azalea appeared at his side as he exited the conference room. "A lot of talk," she said, her tone sardonic. "But will it lead to action?" Jace sighed. "Diplomacy is its own kind of battlefield, Princess. The right words, the right alliances can be as powerful as any weapon." Azalea scoffed. "Pretty words won't stop a Zorgon plasma torpedo. We need to hit them hard, hit them now, before they have a chance to regroup." "And we will," Jace assured her. "But we have to be smart about it. We can't afford to alienate potential allies or overextend ourselves. Trust me, Princess, we're all in this fight together." Azalea held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded curtly. "I do trust you, Commander. I just hope your Union leaders know what they're doing." As she strode away, her silver hair glinting under the lights, Jace couldn't help but echo her sentiment. The road ahead was uncertain, the challenges daunting. But one thing was clear: the crew of the Valiant would be at the forefront of this fight. They would stand as the shield of the innocent, the sword of justice. And they would not rest until the galaxy was safe once more. The price of peace. The war against the Zorgons had entered a new phase. With each passing week, more and more systems pledged their support to the Galactic Union, drawn by the promise of protection and the legend of the Battle of Corex Prime. Jace and the crew of the Valiant were at the forefront of this effort, their ship a symbol of hope and defiance. But the Zorgons were far from defeated. They had withdrawn to their core systems, fortifying their positions and licking their wounds. Intel suggested they were working on new weapons, new ships designed specifically to counter the tactics that had proved so effective at Corex Prime. Jace knew it was only a matter of time before they struck back, and when they did, it would be with a fury unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The blow came on a quiet morning, as Jace was reviewing reports in his ready room. The comm system chimed, and Kira's voice filled the room, tense with urgency. "Captain, we're receiving a distress call from the Aurelian homeworld. They're under attack." Jace was on his feet in an instant, set a course, maximum warp. Red alert, all hands to battle stations. But even as the Valiant leaped into warp, racing towards the besieged planet, Jace knew they would be too late. The Aurelians were a peaceful people, their defenses minimal. Against a determined Zorgon assault, they stood little chance. When they dropped out of warp at the edge of the Aurelian system, Jace's fears were confirmed. The once verdant world was shrouded in smoke, the scars of orbital bombardment visible even from space. Zorgon ships swarmed over the planet like angry hornets, their weapons firing ceaselessly. "Hail them," Jace ordered, his voice grim. The viewscreen shifted to show the sneering face of a Zorgon commander, his eyes alight with cruel satisfaction. "Ah, the famous valiant," he hissed. "You're too late, human. This world is ours now." "This is a neutral world," Jace shot back, his anger barely contained. "The Aurelians are a peaceful people. They have done nothing to you." The Zorgon laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "They chose the wrong side in this war. They will serve as an example to all who would defy us." With that, the screen went dark. Jace slumped back in his chair, the weight of failure heavy on his shoulders. They had been outplayed, the Zorgons striking at a target they hadn't even considered. How many more innocent lives would be lost before this war was over? In the days that followed, the grim news continued to pour in. The Aurelians had been all but wiped out, their cities razed, their population enslaved, and they were not the only ones. The Zorgons had launched simultaneous attacks on a dozen worlds, striking at the heart of the Galactic Union. The war had entered a dark new chapter. For every victory the Union scored, the Zorgons seemed to claim two more. Despair began to set in, the once bright hope of a quick victory fading into the cold reality of a protracted, bloody conflict. But through it all, Jace and his crew refused to give in. They fought on, rallying their allies, striking back wherever they could. They knew that surrender was not an option, that the price of peace was eternal vigilance. And so they pressed on, the valiant a shining beacon in the darkness of war. They would fight, and they would keep fighting, until the Zorgon threat was ended, until the galaxy was safe once more. It would not be easy. It would demand sacrifices, sorrow, and loss. But it was a price they were willing to pay. For the sake of the Aurelians, for the sake of all those who looked to the stars with hope and dreamed of a better tomorrow, they would pay it gladly. The war continued, but so too did the legend of the Valiant and her valiant crew, the heroes who had stood against the darkness and refused to yield. And in the end, that legend would light the way to victory.